Film fans of YouTube, hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Josh, your movie apprentice, and today I am looking at Boy Kills World, directed by Moritz Mohr, and starring Bill Skarsgård, Jessica Rothe, Sharlto Copley, Andrew Koji, and Brett Gelman. This follows a character known only as Boy, who after his mother and sister are killed, and he is left with his tongue cut out. He has been deafened. He has been trained by a shaman for years, and he is finally about to go out and get revenge on the people that took everything from him. Before I get into my review, if you like what you're seeing on the channel, click that like button and subscribe for more video reviews that's coming all the time. Without further ado, let's jump right into this review. If video game violence could be depicted in movie form, Boy Kills World is that movie. Our lead protagonist, played expertly by Bill Skarsgård, is effectively a video game hero. He has spent his life playing in arcadey fighting games, and he is deaf, he is mute, he cannot talk, so he is driven by the inner voice of the same voice actor that plays Archer in that series, and that voice gives some great credence to the film and how it plays out, because tonally it is a bloody action comedy. The relationship between our character, played by Bill Skarsgård, with his expressions versus the voiceover dialogue presented by his inner voice, how they have to match up together to really deliver some high, tense comedic moments. It's a great risk that the film took, and it succeeded immensely, because the tone of the voice had to be right, along with the expressions that Bill Skarsgård was pulling. But of course, the guy who played Pennywise was very expressive and really helped deliver a lot of hardcore comedy moments amongst all the blood and guts, because rest assured, this film, it's very bloody. I felt like last year we were really missing that style over substance movie. There's always that one movie that comes out a year where there's a style over substance that I just eat up. Last year we didn't get that movie, but this year that title very much falls with Boy Kills World, because the comedy elements of it are really well played out, though it does leave some knowledge and logic gaps in exchange for comedy moments. For example, he can only communicate by lip reading. That's how he can tell what people are saying. So when he meets a character that speaks a language he does not know, we get some very random dialogue that leaves some very random imaginary scenarios and cutaways that give some of the most bizarre moments in the film, but it manages to work with the tone that the film sets. And we are given a number of colorful characters. The way that the boy recruits some friends throughout the course of the movie is really entertaining. Andrew Koji plays a character that joins the boy on his journey, and he comes out with some very thick Aussie accent bits of dialogue that really help carry some of the earlier moments, especially as Boy doesn't really have any friends. He's never had a friend, so he is excited at having this ally to fight with, but he obviously cannot communicate. This character that Andrew Koji plays just goes with it, and there's some very funny one-sided exchanges, one especially when it comes to doing some cart stuff. And the film's tone, at times, can be a little bit of a detriment, I will say, however, because there are some emotional beats that kind of get ignored for the sake of comedy. Boy sees this individual crying, does not know what crying sounds like, so imagine something that just comes across as funny, and we as an audience know there's probably some tragedy story that's being told there. It's being told for the character that our main character cannot understand, and he cannot comprehend the emotions that are being exchanged. And the film does its best to ignore any deep emotions for the vast majority of its runtime, and just leans heavily onto some very bloody action sequences. This film very much felt like a throwback to the Kick-Ass days, that very Kick-Ass Kingsman style of action. Argyle brought it back this year, but for some reason it didn't quite work tonally, whereas Boy Kills World brings that same fluid motion of camera work through these action sequences with some very over-the-top character designs and costumes, but gives us a lot of blood and guts along the way as well. This film goes hard when it comes to its score. I will say it is definitely not for the squeamish, especially when it comes to the final fight, because when we get to the final fight, this whole video game violence aspect of the movie that really carries it for the first 2/3 that slowly fades away and transitions into a more grounded story with more personal, emotional stakes. Now, it takes a long time for the film to commit to the emotion when it spends the first 2/3 of the movie outright trying to ignore any emotional connections. One of the main throw lines of this movie is the boy keeps seeing an apparition of his sister when she was a child that is just there rooting for him the whole time and is just in his head. That aspect is interesting, but again, doesn't feel completely fleshed out. This film for me was a very fun, bloody, entertaining, but very middle of the road action movie until we get to the final third. Now, I was expecting some reveals to happen, and I was half right on some of them, but the fact of the matter was that for all the time that the film dedicates to being this silly, over-the-top, gory piece of action cinema, complete with, there's a whole cheese grater sequences. He is fighting people with a cheese grater and just taking the skin away. It is unfiltered when it comes to how graphic the violence does become in this film's runtime. But when we get to the final set of events that lead into the finale, it opens up a few questions when it comes to character motivations, as some characters seem to shift sides with very little convincing. It feels there's a lot of lore into this dystopian future. There is a lot of lore that is left to the wayside just to purely focus on the action. It ignores this potential dystopian world to tell this story of revenge. But when we get to that final fight, oh my god, when we get to some actual emotional stakes, the film pushes itself up in my estimations because the choreography of one is really entertaining. It does leave me with some questions as to why our lead couldn't just beat their final boss quite easily, considering what we are seeing him go through. However, the way it balanced the emotional stakes that just come out of absolutely nowhere, but very much helped carry that final fight, of how just personal it gets. Like, think of all the action in the first 2/3 as GTA violence. You go around, you shoot people, there is massacres happening, you're slicing zombies in other games. It is pure video violence that really leans into this kid that grew up with these arcade games and the fatalities of Mortal Kombat. And then we get to that final bit where the fights get personal and there's more emotion within it. That is really, really well done. However, I felt like they could have brought some emotion in a little bit earlier. Like, one character I mentioned has a death, and I couldn't tell if I was supposed to feel sad or amused by it because the scene keeps going, but the way Bill Skarsgård is emoting at a particular point in the movie leads me to believe I was supposed to feel something emotional in that particular moment. And unfortunately, it did not, as this character at that point had just been this comedic side character the whole way through. So Boy Kills World is a gloriously fun time at the movies that blends comedy with seriousness well at times, but it takes too long to transition from completely ignoring sentimental emotion for the majority of the runtime before eventually drifting into a more gritty and harsh finale. Before I get into my grade, if you'd like to see that channel, click the like button and subscribe for more video reviews that's coming all the time. But without further ado, let's get into the grade. So Boy Kills World is a video game come to life on the big screen. The glorious violence of it feels very reminiscent of Kick-Ass, of Kingsman. And when we compare it to video games, we have that Mortal Kombat violence, we have that Gears of War violence. The comedy aspects of it and the over-the-top nature really carries it for the first 2/3 of the film. And the film realizes that there's only so far it can run on those legs and takes a little bit too long to shift to a more personal and gritty side of things. Like, we have had revenge stories this year. This is like the third film now that has featured these epic action sequences with elements of revenge in there. And Boy Kills World finds the balance for the most part, but it feels like there's a certain point where it could have gone into that more serious route, or it could have completely ignored the more serious route and just ended up being a middle of the road action movie that was filled of blood and gore. But the final fight alone was enough to elevate the film slightly for me to put to a higher grade. I'm gonna have to say that overall, that Boy Kills World is a good cup of tea. So Boy Kills World, have you seen it? If you have, then you thought down in the comments below. What did you think? Let me know. And until next time, everybody, I am Josh. I have been your Movie Apprentice. I'll see you all in the next video.